What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
The C6 generation, aka 4F Audi A6, at first glance, turned out to be absolutely traditional, the same two body types as before, and the body itself did not become aluminum, which many hoped for. A wide choice of motors and multi-lever front, and indispensable all-wheel drive quattro remained. But it is only at first glance, and in fact there are a lot of changes in this generation. A6 C6 has a completely new body, the dimensions of which have significantly increased. The design of the body became more modern, and the power structure was designed from scratch. It received a reinforced center tunnel as the basis of the body frame and a very strong interior cage. At the same time, the wheelbase remained roughly the same. What is pleasant, the body of front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive cars is unified in design. In the last generation, the rear part was not interchangeable. On this one there are differences only in the subframes. As before, the body is made of galvanized steel, the hood is made of aluminum. However, in this generation the front fenders are aluminum. The front body panel is traditionally for Audi plastic and removable. The electric stuffing here is completely new, partially unified with PL46-47 platforms in terms of functionality of units. For most users these changes are noticeable by the appearance of MMI system and the widest possibilities of customization of electronics. And this is the first Audi model with a component protection system. The introduction of Swedish know-how was not painless and has changed the nature of car electronics maintenance. The engine lineup has also changed significantly. Only diesel 2-litre engines with pump jets of BLB and British English series, 3-litre atmospheric gasoline motor of BBJ series and V8 with a volume of 4.2 litres of BAT series were left from the good old. All other A6 C6 engines on the last generation were not found on the last generation and are very different from them structurally. The new V6 gasoline engine families with displacements of 2.4, 2.8 and 3.2 litres, V8 with 4.2 litres and V10 with displacements of 5.0 and 5.2 litres have all aluminum blocks with a Lucille technology chain timing mechanism installed on the flywheel side and direct fuel injection. The 2-litre supercharged engine belongs to the old EA113 family, but in this generation it has a completely new cylinder head and direct injection. The diesel V6S also belong to a completely new family and feature an aluminum block, chain timing, also on the flywheel side and common rail injection. Pay attention to the sharp increase in power in the S6 and especially RS6 variants. Even now, the biturbo V10 remains the craziest variant of the RS model. 650 horsepower in the stock form is a lot even today. There are fewer innovations in transmission, variator and manual boxes are the same as they were on the previous generation, and only automatic transmission in all-wheel drive variants is new, 6-speed ZF Series 6 HP. Suspensions have changed minimally, but some changes are worth paying attention to. The rear suspension of the C6 has become multi-lever, it was double wishbone, and front-wheel drive cars now have the same multi-lever suspension at the rear, not a beam, as it was in the previous generation. In addition, air suspension is now available not only on the all-road quattro version, but also on conventional sedans and station wagons in top packages. Proceeding from the above-mentioned, it is possible to draw the first conclusion: A6 of new generation became not only bigger, more powerful and more perfect, but also on the average appreciably more expensive in operation. True, their consumer characteristics are completely different. Timeline: March 2004. Presentation of the model at the Geneva Motor Show. April 2004. Start of sales of the model in Germany. Body only sedan, engines, gasoline 2.4, 3.2 FSI and 4.2 MPI with an output of 177, 256 and 335 horsepower and diesels 2.0 TDI and 3.0 TDI, 140 and 224 horsepower. MKP is available for all versions except for top versions with a 4.2-litre engine. Front-wheel drive cars can be equipped with a variator, all-wheel drive, 6-speed automatic transmission from ZF. In some countries are available with older engines 3.0 MPI 215 218 HP. Fall 2004. The Avant station wagon is presented. A 2.7-litre turbo diesel with an output of 180 horsepower was added to the engine lineup. March 2005. Start of sales of cars with station wagon body. A 2.0 TFSI engine, 170 horsepower, available only in front-wheel drive version, was introduced in the engine lineup. April 2006. Appearance of S6 version with a 5.2-litre V10 engine with 540 horsepower in sedan and station wagon bodies, as well as all-road Quattro model based on A6 C6. The V6 engine lineup is expanded by the appearance of a 2.8-litre version, 210 horsepower. The 4.2 MPI engine is replaced by 4.2 FSI engine with an output of 350 horsepower. January 2008. RS6 with biturbo V10 engine with an output of 650 horsepower is presented. September 2008. Restyling of the model. Appearance and electronics were changed, there were built-in DRLs, rear lights became LED, there was a new MMI system. The principles of tire pressure monitoring system have been changed, and it has become standard equipment for all versions. The version with a 2.4-litre engine is completely removed from production, the 2.8-litre engine is modernized, the power of. The new version has increased to 190 horsepower in front-wheel drive cars and up to 220 horsepower in all-wheel drive cars. Engines 3.0 MPI and 3.2 FSI are no longer available, instead there is a 3.0 TFSI 290 horsepower with a compressor. The 2-litre diesel engines have changed generation and are only available with common rail injection in 136 and 170 horsepower variants. The 2.7-litre diesel is only available in a 190 horsepower variant, and the 3.0 is only available in 240 horsepower. May 2011. Withdrawal of the model from production. Gasoline variants have not been produced since the beginning of the year. Body. Exterior panels. There are definitely difficulties with the quality of paintwork in Audi cars of the period of production of 2001 to 2006. But it is the A6 C6 that they concern to the least extent. There, as before, is a fully galvanized body and very few aluminum parts, hood and front fenders. So usually there are no serious problems with corrosion, but much depends on body care. Unfortunately, as on other cars of the brand of this period, the paintwork on the A6 can peel off over a large area. In addition, chipping can occur on doors and fenders. In general, it is necessary to treat to repair of paintwork on this generation a little more carefully than on older cars. Any chip can be the reason of paint layer detachment. The list of problem places is rather large. Fading chrome inserts, which obviously fade with time, are a trifle. First of all, it is worth paying attention to the condition of the windshield frame. Rust on the upper edge and even under the side moldings is a fairly common phenomenon, and repainting of these places is almost always found. Considering the average mileage over 250,000 kilometers, it is not terrible, it is only important that the frame was intact and rust did not go under the glass. The side doors are rusting at the junction with the lower molding, and the small dots of corrosion you may notice are just the tip of the iceberg. Almost the entire process is hidden by the plastic overlay, and you can only understand the extent of the damage by disassembling the door. Small corrosion on door handles is not terrible, but the area around it is easily scratched and is often not in the best condition. The reason lies in the design of the door handle itself, and experienced owners glue a film around the top edge of the handle. This avoids chipping at the point of contact between the handle and the body and scratches on the door itself. Rear arches are often chipped and swollen, and defects on the rear fender at the junction with the bumper are not uncommon. They can be found on the trunk lid and on the rear door of station wagons along the plastic lining of the license plate niche and at its mounting points. In most cases, the corrosion is shallow and you can do with a simple painting, but neglected copies in recent years are more and more often. However, fenders and trunk lids are available for sale, and used ones are relatively inexpensive. Pay attention to the lower mounts of the front fenders. The fenders, of course, are aluminum, but they crumble white powder quite quickly. If the bottom of the fender breathes, then most likely the attachment points have been lost for a long time and only replacement or gluing a new piece will help. Chips on the edge of the front fender are generally not dangerous, but they do occur frequently. In most cases, you won't see any serious holes or layer upon layer of rust. The cars almost always have intact sills, and the damage in the form of chips on the panels, door edges and arches looks purely cosmetic. But, unfortunately, first impressions are often deceptive, and this is especially true for doors. It is very important to take care of painting in time. Numerous chips not only spoil the appearance, but also greatly reduce the amount of zinc on the panels. From below, the view of the Audi A6 on the elevator will most likely not disappoint. Even in rather neglected externally copies of the first years of production, the bottom can be intact, thanks to a thick layer of bitumen protection, plastic panels and good coloring. But the main attention should be paid not to the bottom and not even to the sills, but to the rear arches and the fuel tank niche. If the rear arches have not been cleaned and not anti-corroded, and the car has been driving in Moscow or St. Petersburg all its life, you can find even through holes under the lockers. Most often in the right arch under the plastic filler neck and at its mounting point, as well as on all sides of the shock absorber, support lining, cable glands and plugs. A very unpleasant place is at the junction of the rear arch and sill, where dirt accumulates even with a dry and serviceable locker. There may simply not be any sill and arch pieces even in cars from southern regions. The area around the fuel tank and trunk floors also rust faster than the rest of the bodywork. And often there is damage to the seam sealant, so if you want, you can find perforations growing around the technological holes in the spars and near the brackets of the trunk and exhaust system mountings. Neither should you neglect to inspect the rest of the body. In the area of the front fender attachment, damage to the front part of the sill is clearly visible, and in the rear part of the sill there may be chips. Yes, rotten sills are still a rarity, but there are plenty of beat-up and poorly restored cars, so check them carefully. Unfortunately, accidental damage from stones and touching the body with soil has not been cancelled. It is very desirable to thoroughly inspect the doors from below. Here you can see their condition much better, because the bottom edge may already be in holes and rust drips, but outside everything will be quite decent. If you have an endoscope or a mirror, it is worth inspecting the top of the front arches. If the lockers are damaged, that shelf under the fender accumulates dirt and rusts quite intensively. If the locker is badly damaged, it is highly recommended to wash out the dirt with a high-pressure washer or remove the wing completely. And check the condition of the upper reinforcement of the spar and the wing shelf. Traditionally, you should check the overmotor niche drains and the presence of a catchment under the right wiper axle. If a small plastic part is lost, the water will flow directly into the block of the interior fan. And clogged drains are fraught with leaks into the cabin through the wiring glands and flooding of the engine control unit. At the same time, you need to make sure that there is no dirt and check the condition of the seams on the mudguard of the engine compartment. In the area of the front suspension bracket, straightness is important not only because of possible crime, but also because the car is heavy and our roads are so bad. High loads from the suspension contribute to deformation and destruction of the seam sealant. The interior requires a traditional moisture check of the floors. Problems like the first generation with the comfort unit, there are no problems here, but moisture on the floor is a bad thing anyway. And the C6 also has a tendency for water to get from the overmotor area into the passenger compartment. In the trunk, mainly pay attention to the condition of the side recesses and the seams of the rear arch mudguard. Often from the inside of the arch, problems are not visible under a layer of anti-corro, and from the trunk you can notice swollen seams. In addition, there are many electronics in the recesses and on the trunk floor, and the battery in the right-hand recess creates an acidic atmosphere. If the vapor vent was not connected, the shelf under the battery is often perforated. And the seams of the rear body panel are bad from the right side. Body equipment here, everything is rather traditional for A6 and is not so terrible. Lenses in headlights burn out, but the service on their replacement is inexpensive, and for replacement it is not even necessary to remove the glass. Glasses don't usually crack, and there are replacements available in case of problems with them. The headlight housing is quite successful. The taillights after restyling came with LEDs and the diodes in them sometimes fail. The lights are nominally not disassembled, but a Dremel works wonders. The immediate repair is simple, usually just need to change 1 or 2 diodes. Panel oxidation is very rare and is usually found on lights that have already been opened for repair. Fog lights are not super reliable, and those who like to turn them on and off will be helped by Chinese ones. They are inexpensive, you can even find LED ones. However, there is already some kohlhosing with Kalina fog lights. Locks traditionally for Audi and Volkswagen suffer from failure of microswitches and, less frequently, failure of locking motors. It is therefore highly recommended to disable double locking on older cars, whereby the locked lock is only opened by an alarm signal. Cars with keyless access have an extremely unfortunate proximity sensor loop in the handles, it comes apart. All this is treatable, but quite troublesome, because you have to remove the frame from the door to access the lock. Besides, the handle is removed even more difficult, and when installing it, you need to make sure that it does not scratch the paintwork of the door. The slightest misalignment and the paint will be stripped in the most noticeable place. However, the plastic of the handle warps in summer due to banal overheating and simply due to age. And also sometimes the cable of the door handle drive tears. The cable drive of a glass in front doors exactly requires replacement once in 150 to 200,000 even at those who do not smoke in the car. Disassembly assembly is traditionally troublesome. The repair itself will be easier if you buy the mechanism complete and more difficult if you save money and replace only the cable with springs. The tailgate lock on station wagons often fails at mileage of 300,000 kilometers or more. In most cases, failures of the motor and microswitches can be treated, but damage to the gears can also occur. But failures of the unlocking button, protective diaphragm and microswitches of the lock itself are the most popular on this A6 cause of battery discharge in winter. The wiper trapezium and drive are quite reliable, but the trapezium itself is all aluminum and easily gets sour when idle for a long time or incorrect assembly. The motor is also strong and even sealed. And if it breaks, it is easy to find an inexpensive second-hand one. As a last resort, a rem compactive from Kalina fits here perfectly. All seals and bushings made of polyamide fit on Audi like native ones. The small float antenna is the source of a lot of problems with the OEM navigation. The antenna is not very airtight and the circuit board inside oxidizes. It is usually useless to repair it, it is easier to buy a new one. You can criticize a little and bumpers, which have a lot of inserts. They hold well only up to the first qualitative impact or parking in a snowdrift, and with time the long front overhang achieves and fastenings of the bumper shell itself. Detail original price of non-original 2-body front headlight xenon not on sale depot 24 215 Hella 52 524. AFL front headlight not on sale Polcar 89 147 Hella 134 504 windshield not on sale Pilkington 11 746 Lemson 8 876 front fender not on sale API 10956, steel, TYG 27999, aluminum, front bumper not on sale Gordon 13692 Cyneda 22591 Hood 93647 Blick 56296, aluminum. Cyneda 19993, steel, interior. The interior of the A6 is excellent. This car has not yet caught the fashion to make interior from the cheapest materials, so the remarks to the interior are insignificant. For example, the abundance of silver inserts slightly spoils the look and soft touch fades on buttons. So, for the climate panel, door lock buttons and for the light switch knob you can buy stencils of symbols to just repaint the whole panel. It's nice that this is the first A6 whose center console was created for the installation of a large multimedia screen. It's noticeable it's fitted in successfully. Button of glove box here is made extremely funny, separately from the lid, and hinges of the box finally became more or less reliable. And do not break at careless owners as it was on the previous generation. The armrest has also become better and stronger, and they got rid of the trouble with the handbrake lever resting in the armrest by removing the mechanical drive of the parking brake. It is electric here. Fabric seats are durable, and leather seats are even more durable, so even with mileage over 300,000 and minimal maintenance, the interior looks as good as new. Of course, heavy drivers and complete lack of care can provide earlier wear, but still most cars have better interior preservation than the body, and only worn buttons of climate, mirrors and light switch knob give away the mileage. And, of course, it is impossible to keep the steering wheel in pristine condition when the mileage exceeds 200,000 even with careful care it loses its texture. There are no problems with dashboard displays here. In case of breakage, the panel is most often replaced by a new one, because with a colored display it costs pennies, cheaper than just full FIS for the last generation, and pre-restyling panels cannot show fuel consumption in liters per hour, which is important for someone. True, panel binding is sometimes difficult, not everyone knows how to do it inexpensively and qualitatively. The MMI display is also quite reliable, and the bulk of the system's problems arise from blocks, wiring or firmware. Now it is much easier to buy a Chinese combine than to make an upgrade of all the numerous blocks. The climate system as a whole is not very troublesome, but still requires attention. Installation of the electric heater valve in the overmotor niche, as in Mercedes, did not make the climate noticeably better, but failures of the valve, as in the Mercs, began to occur regularly. It is good that the valve is collapsible, and in case of sticking it can be cleaned. Numerous climate control flaps rustle and sometimes fail, just like on the Passat B6, and the newer the climate control firmware, the rarer it is. And those who do not change antifreeze in time, the radiator of the heater may leak. It is quite delicate here. The air conditioner compressor passes its 250,000th service life, but only on condition of control of freon and oil in the system. And it is better not to save on oil. If the system is left empty, the compressor fails almost immediately. A pump with variable volumetric capacity is used here. However, it is also equipped with a clutch, which allows you to disconnect the connector, after which the system will not try to check the pressure by turning on the compressor. Still, it is better not to take any risks. Cars with V8 and V10 engines have their own compressor, more expensive and without a clutch. And they say, it breaks more often than on simpler cars. Most of the system failures are connected with leaks due to corrosion of tubes and condenser. The latter is very delicate, and it is better to wash it regularly. It is necessary to be careful with aggressive washing chemistry. Electrics. I've already mentioned that the electronics here are new, with new units. Everything seems to be great and very intelligent, and even the oil dipstick on the A6 C6 is electronic. It is also, but to protect against theft of expensive, according to the manufacturer, blocks, the so-called component protection was introduced. It does not allow you to simply put a second-hand unit from one car to another. Combined with the abundance of rather raw at the first stage blocks and complex wiring, this immediately had a striking effect. The price of operation of dealer cars outside the warranty has skyrocketed in times. The problems with protection should be remembered not only when replacing blocks, but also during normal upgrades. There were many cases with failure of part of electronics when updating MMI firmware or separate components. Let me remind you that there is a huge number of blocks here, about 30 pieces even in an average configuration. Here is a picture from SSP. The list of protected units is impressive, and I will only mention those that can get you stuck in the middle of nowhere with no way to do anything without a dealer or specialist. First of all, driver identification alarm system units. Most can gateway module, traffic exchange point, and comfort unit controlling. Lights, central locking system and starter and automatic transmission lock can be to blame for this trouble. In addition, the vehicle can be immobilized by the powertrain charge control unit, instrument panel and MMI unit. Disconnection, replacement, firmware update or simply failure of any of these components can cause inoperability of some blocks or inability to start the engine. Typical problems that are still relevant today include steering column lock module failures, electronic relay failures in the comfort unit, and parktronic failures. The parking sensors have weak harnesses and their sensors are poorly sealed. The steering column unit has an electric locking actuator, which fails at mileage over 150,000 kilometers. Its replacement is complicated by binding the block to the alarm system and protection of components, and the block itself, even second-hand, is expensive. In extreme case, you can bite only one black-red wire in the green connector of the block under the steering column, and the car will start without problems. Blown relay chips in the comfort unit most often manifest themselves in the form of non-functioning turn signals. The reasons are different, but most often they are short circuits when replacing bulbs. It is not necessary to change the whole block. I will remind you once again about protection of components, and it will be easier. To resolder the microcircuit, which costs 80 rubles retail and an order of magnitude cheaper if you order 100 pieces from China. Most likely, the electrics of any A6 of this generation have already been brought to a stable state, but age and the desire for upgrades interfere here. What can you do if this generation's A6 is just as much of a constructor as the cars on the PQ46 platform without a scanner? Any electrical problem is almost unsolvable, but there are a lot of VCDs clones nowadays. They are cheap and well mastered. So do not pay attention to the rather hysterical tone of publications of the early 10th years, then C6 simply did not know how to cook yet. It is pleasant that quality of wiring is better than in more budgetary congeners, but in the engine compartment its condition is almost certainly on the verge of failures. The trunk harness on sedans is always malfunctioning for some reason, and the battery harness is often worth rewiring. Corrosion at the tips leads to voltage drop at the contacts. Generators on A6 are smart, and it should be taken into account when replacing batteries and controlling the voltage of the onboard network. Intermediate result: the body of A6 C6 is quite good, but only on condition of careful enough care for it. Total corrosion should not be expected yet, but one should not buy a car without looking. After all, this Audi is not 2 or 3 years old anymore. Electrical failures are possible, but everything is solvable, especially if you have a good technician with a scanner at hand. Although we must admit that some things can break down quite expensively. But the interior is definitely good. So good that it will be difficult to determine the mileage by its condition. Therefore, you should inspect the car before buying it very carefully, not much trusting the shiny interior of the car and honest eyes of the seller. Good materials can confuse and convince you that a 15-year-old car can have a mileage of 50,000 kilometers. It can, of course, but very rarely. In conclusion, while the Audi A6 C6 offers a blend of luxury and performance, potential buyers should be aware of its vulnerabilities. The issue of aluminum can rot is a significant concern that may affect the vehicle's longevity and appearance. Additionally, the wear and tear on the buttons can detract from the overall aesthetic and functionality of the interior. If you're considering this model, it's essential to factor in these aspects and be prepared for some maintenance. Ultimately, with proper care and attention, the Audi A6 C6 can still provide an enjoyable driving experience. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more insights on automotive topics.